After F2L, you can do a thing called for look last layer, where you do the last layer in 4 algorithms, with 2 of them being making a top face, and then the other step permuting the last layer, or PLL. And there you go, that's just a quick example. So let's just get started with the basics. So the first step is to make a top cross, and this has 3 algorithms. And then you orient the corners, and this has 7 algorithms. And then you permute the corners, or get them into their correct position. That only has 2 algorithms. And then you solve the whole cube from there by permuting the edges, and this has 4 algorithms. This is 16 algorithms total, which sounds like a lot, but it's not really, especially if you chunk it down into what I just did with 1 step at a time, and just kind of work from there. So let's just get started with the very first step, making the top cross. The first top cross case is if you have a line here, and you would hold it sideways like this, and do this algorithm. And that makes the top cross. Now in cube notation, that may look a little weird, but it's basically F, and then the beginner's algorithm, or right algorithm, which is also known as sexy move, and then F prime. And there you go. If you have this sort of L case here, then what you do is wide F, sexy move, and then wide F prime, and that makes the top cross. And finally, if you have a dot case where none of these edges are oriented, then you kind of do both. You do F, sexy move, F prime, and then wide F, sexy move, and then wide F prime. It's kind of long, but you can get used to it. Okay. Onto the longest part, which is orienting the corners. These first 2 are when 1 corner is oriented correctly and the other 3 are not. So how I recognize between these 2 cases is you hold the correct one at the left front here, and if this yellow sticker is facing towards you, then you do this case. Now, in cube notation, this also looks weird, but just remember, this is the same case we used in the beginner's version to permute all of the edges. Now, if you hold it at the left front and this is facing away, the yellow sticker there, then what you do then is you hold it at the back right and do this algorithm. And there you go. If you have 2 opposite facing corners, so these 2 are not facing up, however these 2 are, then you hold it like this, where these 2 are facing up and this one is facing towards you. So this one, if you held it here, it would be facing away from you. So you hold it like this and do this case. And that makes a top face. If you have this case where these 2 are facing up and these 2 that aren't facing up are sort of facing opposite directions, then you do this to make the top face. This next case is when these 2 are facing up, however these 2 are facing the same way. So instead of holding these at the right, you actually hold them at the back. And you do this algorithm, which does have D moves, which does make it a little bit harder to learn. And there you go. On to the next cases where none of the edges are oriented. The first one of these cases is when these 2 are facing opposite, or these 2 are facing the same way, and these 2 are facing opposite directions, in which case you do this. And that makes the top face. Now, the very first algorithm I showed you, this case is kind of like a slightly extended version of that one. And how you recognize it is these two are facing the same way, and these two are facing the same way. And again, none of the corners are facing up. So you do this. And that makes top face. And now we can move on to PLL. And what you want to look for are corners that are, these two corners are the same color. These are called headlights, and you hold them on the left and do an algorithm. But before I show you what it is, I'm going to show you the case where there are no headlights first, or two corners of the same color facing next to each other, so you get a better understanding of it. So once again, if you have no headlights, you can just hold it from anywhere. A quick way to tell if you don't have headlights is if these two are opposite headlights, where this is sort of green and blue, they're opposite colors, and these are also opposite colors. And what you do here, I'll have it written in cube notation. It looks kind of long, but you can actually just do this. You do F, bring this pair here, do a U prime, and then take it back out here, and then do F prime at the end. And then from here, you bring this pair out, and then you put it back in a different way like this. And there you go. Now, if you actually do have headlights, then you hold them at the left, and you do the same thing as the case where there are no headlights, but in a different order. So you would first take these out and put them back in a different way like this. However, instead of doing like the F prime at the end, you just move straight on into the second step where you insert this, do a U prime, take it back out, and then F prime. And from there, all of the corners should be solved, and now we can move on to the edge cases. So most of the time you'll have one that is solved, and what you want to, and there are two separate of these cases where one of them is solved. They're both called U-perm, by the way. Totally not the best case in any way. No bias at all. Seriously, no bias here, no bias. Okay, in all seriousness, how you look for these two separate cases is this one here, these two, and this edge. These have opposite headlights, where basically these two corners match, and this edge is opposite of those two corners. So if you hold the correct one at the back, and the opposite headlights are on the right, then you do this case. Now, before I move on, all of these cases will just be M moves and U moves. So, if these are on the right, then you do this. And there you go, that's it. However, if the opposite headlights are on the left, here, then you do this. And the only difference is that you do U prime instead of U. Another way to tell is basically, I'm gonna do an alg. So if they're on the right, then you do M2, and whichever side the opposite headlights are on, you bring it towards you, and then you just continue with the alg as usual. That's another way to tell. Okay, on to the last two cases. You're almost there. Now, these last two, all of them will be wrong. And for this first case, you hold it from anywhere because all of these are opposite headlights. There are two ways to do it. The only difference is that instead of U, it's U prime and vice versa. So I'll just do the one that I prefer. However, I'll have both of them on the screen there. Okay, the last case, and this is where these two need to swap and these two need to swap. Now, just like the last case, there are two ways to do it. However, for both of them, you hold them differently, so I'll actually go through both of them. The first one, if you prefer U prime instead of U, which is what I prefer, then you hold these at the back and left, and these at the front and right, and do this. And it's a bit longer than the others, but it's fine. Now, if all of the corners were aligned correctly, then you will have to do a U move at the end. However, if you prefer U moves instead of U prime, I know lots of people do, then you hold these two that need to swap with each other at the back and right, and these at the front and left, and just do the same thing, but instead of U prime, it's U. And again, if all of the corners here were correct, then you'll have to do a U move at the end. But that is going to be it for this tutorial. I hope you know F2L before you learn this. And then once you're done with this, you can move on to my cross tutorial, or intermediate cross tutorial, which will be coming out hopefully tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!